Debbie is about to make landfall in South Carolina. Good Wednesday evening. I'm Mike Nasel with the latest on Tropical Storm Debbie. There's a look at the radar of the southern United States, and there's a lot of heavy rainfall impacting the Carolinas from Tropical Storm Debbie, which is just offshore, about 25 miles to the east-northeast of Charleston, South Carolina, moving very slowly at 3 miles per hour, but the center should cross the coast sometime in the next few hours. Here's the latest on Debbie as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time. It was at 32.9 north, 79.5 west, winds of 60 miles per hour, and like I said, north-northwest at 3 miles per hour means those center of the storm should move right across the coastline in the next couple of hours. It will officially make landfall when the center of the center crosses the coast. Tropical storm warnings, of course, in effect from Modesto Beach, South Carolina, all the way up to Surf City, North Carolina, and we do have tropical storm conditions occurring. A lot of the heaviest wind has been in outer bands well away from the center, some of them still offshore. Debbie should weaken into a tropical depression by Thursday night or Friday, and then finally jettison on off to the northeast and get out of here. We're not going to have to deal with it anymore. Where is Debbie right now? Here is the current location, and it gives you a good idea. It is about to move right into Bulls Bay, and so the center should make landfall very near Bulls Island, Bulls Bay, Sandy Point Beach. But again, that's kind of irrelevant because the impacts are spread far away from the center. That's just for the sake of showing you where the actual center should cross the coast. Severe weather is an impact. We do have a tornado watch out. That includes areas just outside of Florence, including Myrtle Beach, all the way through Wilmington, New Bern, all the way up towards the Outer Banks to Fayetteville. This area here under a tornado watch. Be careful, because whenever we have a landfalling tropical cyclone, we often get spin-ups of tornadoes in these outer bands. Again, a lot of heavy weather now moving in through areas of Fayetteville and New Bern, headed in the general direction of Raleigh and Charlotte. So again, be very cautious of heavy rainfall and the threat of flooding. The rainfall over the next few days, we'll see it spread up through Virginia and areas there of Pennsylvania into upstate New York, and we'll get Debbie out of here. And it was prolific rainfall, there was flooding, and there is still a high flood risk from areas there of Charleston to Wilmington all the way up to Roanoke, and then even moderate flood risk into areas of New England and upstate New York. So again, Debbie left her mark. This was over Cuba a couple of days ago, and now we're talking about impacts all the way up to Burlington, Vermont. It's just amazing to me how far these systems travel and the impacts they bring. The key messages for Tropical Storm Debbie: number one, heavy rainfall over the Carolinas will persist through Thursday. Considerable flooding expected, heavy rainfall, considerable flooding across the mid-Atlantic states into the northeast through Saturday morning. We'll have tropical storm conditions along South Carolina and North Carolina coast through Thursday. It's been lashing them for at least 24 to 36 hours, and we have the tropical storm warnings and watches in effect. And we will have coastal flooding due to storm surge along the South Carolina and North Carolina coastline through Thursday. Again, that is because you have the onshore flow around the right side of the counterclockwise spinning of the tropical storm. Now, here's the water vapor imagery, and this gives you a good idea that Debbie could have been worse because it did suck in some drier air. And not only did that prevent it from strengthening in part over the Gulf Stream, it was also very large. It doesn't have a tight inner core, and you have to have a tight inner core to strengthen. So down in the Gulf of Mexico, she had an inner core and she was able to become a hurricane, but after she left Florida, the dry air from the trough and that left her behind, that kind of entrained, and she became more of a spinning pinwheel. So that allowed her to stay a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm and not a hurricane. And that also helped prevent the storm from being even more of a rainmaker than it could have been. Not to say there isn't flooding and it's not prolific, but it could have been even worse. Now, here in the Midwest, there's a mid-latitude trough that's going to push through. That's what's going to pick Debbie up and slide her through New England, and we'll finally get rid of Debbie, won't have to deal with her anymore. Now, as far as the rest of the tropics are concerned, these are the ensembles from the European model, and look at Debbie gets out of here in the northeast. But watch what happens here in the central Atlantic in the next 2 days. We get a wave moving through the Caribbean towards the Bahamas, maybe towards Bermuda, somewhere there near the Sargasso Sea off the coastline of the Bahamas. That could be a problem. And then they show even another wave developing off Africa here and this is all by August 17th. Now, those are just some ensemble models, some spaghetti plots, but this could be a problem here, and the GFS model, as of the 18Z, is showing a problem. Watch what happens. Here's our system that starts to develop. There goes Debbie. Watch the Central Atlantic here. The GFS model shows that through the next 36, 48 hours, the system develops, becomes a hurricane. Look at that. On August 13th, a hurricane for the Virgin Islands moves through Puerto Rico on August 14th, Hispaniola, and then into the Bahamas as a strong hurricane before getting sheared and then eventually turning northward as a weaker system. So, not before impacting areas kind of in a track like that. That would be very nasty, and then we'd have more waves after that. So, that's just one run of the GFS model, but it's something to watch. Do we have anything out there right now? Yeah, we do. There goes Debbie. Sorry for the flicker in the satellite that happens sometimes. Here's that wave we were watching in the Central Atlantic. Never quite got its act together. It should move into the Eastern Pacific. It might do something there. But once we get rid of Debbie and once we get rid of this wave, we'll be watching this area of the Intertropical Convergence Zone, the ITCZ, because this is where there's a lot of thunderstorms that flare up and we get systems developing. Remember, in July, it's very rare, but we had Hurricane Beryl develop from a cluster of thunderstorms very much like that. And it was a Category 5 hurricane in the Caribbean. So again, we'll watch this area very carefully to see if anything develops. The next name on the list, by the way, it would be the fifth name storm, the E storm. It is the name Ernesto. And Ernesto is one of the original names on this list when they created the 6 name list back in 1979. And this name list was first used back in 1982. There was Ernesto all the way back then. We've never had a very memorable and destructive Hurricane Ernesto. Hopefully, if this becomes Ernesto, it stays with that pattern, but we'll have to wait and see. So that'll do it on the tropics. Debbie should move ashore in the next few hours. Continued impacts along the Carolina coastline in the form of gusty winds, crashing waves, water rises, heavy rainfall, and flooding. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on Tropical Storm Debbie, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.